Hello and welcome to Indian Standard Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan, and joining me today to discuss the attempted coup in his country on July 15th is the Ambassador of Turkey, Mr. Burak Akçapar. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
July 15th was a shocking day for all of us. Of course, people in Turkey, but around the world. Turkey is not exactly a stranger to coups. We've had coups in the past, but the entire world had assumed that Turkey had turned a page and that you had managed to consolidate democracy, and then we saw the dreadful events of the 15th. You were sitting here in Delhi, you've been here for several years as ambassador. How did you react to the unfolding events? What was your sources of information? Were you in touch with your head office, with your foreign office? Please tell us, for the benefit of our viewers, how you reacted to what was happening on that morning.
I was zapping through the channels on Turkish TV, and which can be seen through satellite here, and came across a kind of a talk show on the way, and on one corner of the talk show they started showing some the pictures, live feed of some military blocking the Istanbul bridge. This seemed rather curious, and people at the show were kind of taken aback by this. Eventually, as time went on it became clear that something extraordinary was on the way, and then it became clear that a rogue group within the military tried to stage a military coup to overthrow the democratically elected president and government of the Republic of Turkey.
What was your memory of 1980, which is the last time that you had a coup when General Kenan Evren took power? Where were you? Which part of the world were you in Turkey at the time?
On September 12, 1980, I was in Turkey, and the memories of coups we hoped we had left behind. The July 15th coup attempt was actually a harbinger of where Turkey has come. You may look at what has happened from the angle of a continuation of the coups, the history of coups in Turkey. But as far as we are concerned, it is the end of the history of coups in Turkey. I think the way people and of course the political parties, the parliament has reacted to this latest coup attempt is clear enough message that the Turkish will not have it again.
So in 1980, what kind of a reaction was there on the street, or was it too brutal of a crackdown at that time?
Actually, I am too young to remember this, but I remember that every coup is something that you rather not have. It's not a good thing. It's a terrible thing, right, that you have coups, right. Therefore, I think those memories, whichever way you would define it, those memories has culminated in the strong reaction that Turkish people have shown against ever having a coup again. And of course, it should be noted that this is not a coup that is kind of a repetition of the previous coups. First of all, the chief of the topmost general, the chief of staff, the top commanders of the three services, they were not involved. And not only that, they were not involved, they were taken hostage by their own security details.
General Hulusi Akar was detained by his own people.
That's right. He resisted after he was kind of detained by his own security detail. He resisted very adamantly in lending any support to this coup, and that has also contributed to the success of the Turkish people in defeating this terrible ordeal.
We saw extraordinary footage of ordinary Turks confronting some of these rogue detachments of soldiers on the streets, inside television studios. Quite amazing footage of journalists and I think CNN Turk officers essentially shouting at these soldiers, taking hold of them, which gives us some indication, as you say, of the change that has happened in Turkey and that it's clear people aren't going to put up with this anymore. But at what point in the day was it clear to you that this attempt was decisively defeated, everything was back to normal? Did you get a message from Ankara that this is what happened today and everything is normal? Did you have to check? Tell us something about what an ambassador does when you're in a situation like this, where you hear that there's an attempted coup in your country.
I was very profoundly disappointed to have witnessed this, and a rogue element trying to do this. I was then kind of overtaken with pride as the people have taken to the streets and stopped this. I realized as the night went on that there's a silver lining to this tragedy. And the silver lining is that a new era has begun in Turkish history where the people have stamped indelibly their stance that is in support of Turkish democracy. And this is how the day broke with those feelings. Of course, we have check the security of the embassy, whether we're okay, whether any ramifications might come about, but we're safely in the hands of our hosts in India.
Now, obviously, investigations are underway back home, and attempts will be made by the government and by the Turkish military leadership to get to the bottom of this plot, this conspiracy. But in your initial assessment, how long has this coup attempt been in the planning stage? Do you think it's something that was in the works for a long time, or was it more of a spur of the moment thing? What's emerged so far?
What is emerging is shocking, in the sense that this coup is the culmination of one secretive organization infiltrating state mechanisms one by one, and every layer. People being put into the system at young ages, then growing within the system, coming to levels like general, admiral, prosecutor, judge, this and that, and then waiting for the right moment to overturn the democratic system of Turkey. When you look at it from this broader perspective, it has taken more than 30 years. The initial strategy to infiltrate, it appears, have begun about 30 years ago.
So during the time of Evren being in power, actually?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's quite a claim you're making.
That is what is becoming very clear from the testimonies, from the of course, when the coup was defeated, there are additional resources made available to our investigating agencies, and the plot is becoming more and more visible. But what is very clear that the leader of that terrorist organization, the Fethullah Gülen terrorist organization, in a 1997 video, which is to be found all over the social media as well, advises or instructs the members of his group to infiltrate the state very secretly, very discreetly, and very patiently, and wait for the right moment. And he warns against coming out too early, which he says would the whole world would crush their heads. This is definitely a very, very dangerous group, very stealthy, and they have shown their true intentions on July 15th and got their definitive answer from the Turkish people.
There was a time, of course, Mr. Ambassador, that the leader of this group that you call terrorist organization, Fethullah Gülen, was an ally of President Erdogan. And there were many, I recall reading articles in the Western press about how President Erdogan was the product of Gulen's attempt to control the Turkish state. So the alliance was very tight between the two. So why is it now that there's been such a falling out between, of course this goes back to a few years, but there was a time when Erdogan and Gulen were united against the military. A lot of the attempt to prosecute some of the Turkish military in the past were the product of this coalition or alliance. So what went wrong in the partnership between Gulen and Erdogan to produce this kind of an outcome?
Let me put it into another perspective. I think the perspective is much broader than this or that. It's what the organization have been trying to do is to make tactical alliances, hiding behind much sought after discourses and nice sounding principles, high principles, benign looking educational establishments, benign looking charitable groups, anything that would that you would fancy. We're living at a time when there's a lot of fanaticism going on, when there are organizations like the ISIS, Daesh, and others who are engaging in terror. So when some organization comes forward with this charitable face, with this high, principled, peaceful stances, they are lured kind of by this tactic. A lot of people have been lured over the decades into cooperating or seeing them in positive light. But what is becoming particularly clear is that all this was a facade to prepare for a coup attempt, a ruthless one, a treacherous one, which killed over 246 people. They have fired with aircraft on the Turkish parliament, on the presidential office, on the people. They have rolled tanks into our streets and killed people until people power has overwhelmed and the soldiers on the street, the rogue elements, they have surrendered. They have unleashed a terror campaign. And this is their true face. This is the face that they have been hiding meticulously for 30 years. It's a scary thought.
What's the next step that the Turkish government will take, the authorities in Ankara, because Mr. Fethullah Gulen is a resident of the United States and enjoys their protection, as it were. Are we going to see a demand that he be handed over to Turkey? And if the US system does not support your demand, how far will you take this process?
We have asked for his extradition to Turkey.
Is there a formal extradition treaty between Turkey and the United States?
There is. We'll make use of that. I think our American friends and allies would understand that they cannot turn a blind eye to the presence on their soil of this individual leading, as he does, this terrorist organization. The evidence of his complicity is overwhelming. It's out there in the testimonies. For instance, you mentioned General Akar, the chief of the Turkish forces, military forces, when he was detained by a security detail. One brigadier comes to him, and because he refuses to side with this rogue element, he proposes to make him talk directly with Fethullah Gulen in the United States. So this is coming out in the testimonies. The role of the organization and its leader is obvious. The United States cannot and should not turn a blind eye to this, nor hide behind this and that. It is very clear what needs to be done, and both the friendship and alliance that we have with the United States, I think demands it.
What are the early indications you're getting from out of Washington about the extent to which the US may cooperate with the Turkish demand?
We have started sending them the necessary documentation. More will be on the way. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey and the Minister of Justice in Turkey will be visiting Washington. And of course, we do expect that they would hand him to Turkey, this I underline, not kind of extradite him to a third country, allow him to disappear, but return to Turkey so that he would be tried by the courts and face the justice.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, one of the theories when we review how such a coup attempt would even be possible in Europe and Turkey, essentially, you may not be in the EU, but you're part of broader European space. One of the theories doing the rounds is that the coup plotters or the rogue elements within the Turkish military believed that in staging their coup against the government of President Erdogan, they would receive support from the West or some governments that were unhappy with some of the policies of the Erdogan government. Is this also a factor emerging so far in your investigation, that some of these generals believed they had the tacit support of perhaps governments or sections of governments in the West?
I don't know, and I don't know what they were thinking, what they were calculating, but what they should have realized is that they are living in Turkey, and the Turkish people would not allow them to stage this coup. And whatever support they thought they would be receiving from whichever quarters does not change this fundamental fact. Turkey is a country that is governed in accordance with the sovereignty of the people. Is a constitutional system which the people of Turkey are determined to protect. And they should have known this. But what appears is that they're working under a certain hierarchy, at the top of which is the person who gives his name to this terrorist organization. And ultimately, it appears that what he thinks or fails to think is responsible for this treachery.
Moving ahead, Mr. Ambassador, is it going to be the view of the Turkish government that every individual associated in some way with the Fethullah Gulen's charitable organizations, he has a vast network of institutions in Turkey. Going by the number of officials who have been suspended or arrested in the aftermath of the July 15th coup attempt, it seems to indicate that your government will now treat anybody with a Gulen connection as a potential suspect. Is that a correct assessment? Is that something that the government needs to do in order to ensure that you identify all the elements involved with this plot? Or is there a danger that you're going too far and that people who have nothing to do with this coup attempt, but who are merely, they believed what Gulen was doing, the charitable activities, and were thus associated with some of the Gulenist activities? Is there a danger that this may target people who have no connection whatsoever with the coup attempt?
The mandate of the people, what the people demand, is for this terrorist network to be fully unearthed and all the relevant data and information be compiled, and then through the prosecutors be submitted to the courts for them to be assessed and tried and decided by the judiciary. That is the due process, and this requires the government to be meticulous and at the same time covering all possible corners. And the task is kind of made more difficult because of the express, intentional, and patient, secretive nature and secretive infiltration of this organization. So I think this is going to, and this is making the job much more difficult, but the job is there. The full extent of the organization must be uncovered. Together with the right information, it needs to be provided to the Turkish courts and Turkish judges. It's going to be, the government is, if you follow the statements that are coming from the justice minister, definitely the prime minister, the president, and everyone involved, and the foreign minister, everyone involved, the government is very carefully underlining the imperative to remain within the rule of law, within the Turkish constitutional system. Everything has to occur in accordance with the demands of the Turkish laws.
Which is now under the state of emergency. Right?
The state of emergency is a legal and constitutional stipulation which allows for everything to remain within the constitutional legal system. It is a mechanism that is designed for extraordinary times, and this is an extraordinary time, the likes of which are visible, observed in other countries. Currently, I think the French are also having a state of emergency. It's a constitutional legal mechanism that is designed by the Constitution to preserve the legal process, and the government is going out of its way to reassure the Turkish people that they are mindful and they will be strictly observing the rule of law and the Turkish constitutional order.
Some human rights organizations, particularly Amnesty International, have made public accusations that some of the soldiers, even officers who have been arrested as part of the coup attempt, are being mistreated. They've talked about torture, sexual torture in some cases. I know your government has denied this, but are you in a position to shed any more light on these accusations? Would your government be willing to investigate some of these claims so that international concerns on this front are allayed?
Well, it is foremost. First of all, Turkey is very much aware of its international obligations, but at the same time, Turkey is also aware of its own kind of obligations in accordance with the Turkish constitutional order, and the prevention of torture is a basic stipulation of Turkish constitution and Turkish laws, and preserved by the mechanisms that come under the Turkish legal order. And the detailed statement which you have referred to, I think, lays out all the steps that are being taken to make sure that nothing of the sort happened. And if it happened, of course, measures will be taken. But the investigations did not corroborate the allegations coming here and there. What was very interesting in the negative sense, the Chinese proverb sense, is the rather lax nature, the lax way with some quarters are approaching the requirement to be kind of meticulous in forwarding certain criticisms or certain allegations. And what we're seeing is a lot of bad information, misinformation that is coming out from different quarters. One US television channel, for instance, was alleging at the time that the president was trying to land in Istanbul, this TV channel was alleging, with reference to a senior US kind of officer, unnamed, that the president was flying towards Germany. And they have yet to, apologize for this misinformation. So I think one needs to be prudent about who is saying what.
And the allegations, these are not allegations, but we've seen news reports of journalists being detained, and also instructions by the Turkish authorities that recalling all Turkish academics back to the universities and a ban on travel abroad without permission. These seem like unusual steps, even in the aftermath of a coup. Why would there be restrictions placed on academics?
What is becoming increasingly obvious, we knew that this existed, but the full extent of which is becoming clear only now, that the reach of the organization was into not just a single state organ. It was not just into the military or just the police or the prosecutors or the judges, but it was also into the business, into definitely the educational establishments, and into the universities and the media. And everyone was assigned a certain role in this complex set of preparations for a takeover of the Turkish constitutional order. Right. The academics would provide a certain, intellectual framework. The media would disseminate it. The military would intervene. The police would detain. The judges would rule in certain directions. For instance, it is now becoming again very clear that some of the brightest military officers were subjected to false court cases, and therefore their careers were halted, and they were removed from the promotion lists, and instead the members of this particular terror organization replaced those officers. It's a vast network with a very evil design.
Right. We are completely out of time, Your Excellency, but we've had, I thought, an insightful conversation into some of the factors leading up to the coup. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on IST.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Indian Standard Time. Do join us again next week with another guest. Thank you for watching.